Well, that's a new one even for me. First human base in the Neptune system, with the azure behemoth setting in the distance, our hardy explorers arrive in their icy home. That is probably the key that is going to allow us to close this challenge out. A coup in the United States of North America does put us over our CP cap, but it does mean that we can start absorbing North American states and make our way, hopefully, from what are we at now? 70% of the world's CP value to 75%. Plus, Americans, you've been living in a totalitarian hellscape this entire game. Maybe we can do some fixing before the game is over. Well done, team. I don't consider a coup to be out of the question given the fact that it was literally a totalitarian hellhole with 9 inequality and 0 democracy, and a whole bunch of unrest, which is ultimately what made it vulnerable to this move. I think it was sitting at like 5 or 6 unrest or something. So we've moved in, we've overthrown most of the United States government, we'll send in our best convincing people, we'll lock down the USNA, and then with that in train, and a few more management research technologies, we should be in a position to continue expanding, absorbing the remaining independent states, and in so doing, probably get 75% of CPs under control. And with our shipyard now operational around Uranus, I have sent probes to most of the objects. We can probe all these in 14 days. Much simpler than using a scanning ship now that we have a shipyard in situ. It will take quite a while to repair the fleet that we've sent out here, but that's okay because we've already thrown the aliens more or less out of the system. My goal for this playthrough requires that I settle every major subsystem, but it doesn't mean I have to settle every object in every subsystem. That would be a little bit nuts and only possible with either hundreds of thousands of MC, or actually, no, if you didn't build mines, it wouldn't be that much of a problem. So anyway, maybe possible, but just a bit dreary and difficult. So the probes will arrive at Titania in a couple of days, 24 May, and at that point we'll plonk a couple of settlements down and establish ourselves in system. We'll also upgrade the station that is currently refueling our units, Shakespeare Station. Simple upgrade to a colony hab, and we should have a much stronger, more permanent presence in system. That said, if you look at the aliens at this point, they don't really have much left. We're chasing after one of these stations now. I'll probably send another action group against another. So sooner or later, they won't even have shipyard infrastructure. We're bombing their mining base periodically. They built one more. I nuked it. So the alien economy is, for all intents and purposes, basically done. They do still have a reasonable fleet, but most of them are just flying towards their home base, trying to protect it from us. So they're down to 23,000 combat potential, and as you can see, an awful lot of them are flying back home, where they will be cut apart by our task force bit by bit, because the aliens hit the panic button when you go after their home base. They send a lot of ships. They don't arrive at the same time. You've got them. So we're in a pretty good place. I now just have to get Earth under bloody control, and we should be in a decent condition. 941 over 908 isn't ideal, but we can sort of live with it for the moment. The United States of North America is not in very good shape. 9 inequality. GDP per capita, no, GDP total of like half of what it was at the start of the game. This is not great. It's seen better days. It has a lot of nukes and a lot of military, but we'll also start disarming the world's nukes relatively soon, I think. Let's move all of those armies south towards Zagreb, and then over towards Bulgaria, which we will absorb. The Eurasian Union has consolidated all of its components, which is good. We may have to put the brakes on Indian growth, but I just kind of want to see how far it'll go, because we're currently at 96,000 GDP per person, giving a total GDP of 460 trillion US dollars equivalent, which is, kind of cool. The Caliphate, I've stopped expanding the economy to try and bring down inequality and bring up democracy. So the Caliphate that rules all of Africa and the Middle East up into Central Asia is now a flawed democracy, which is significant progress. The South American Union is making progress more slowly. We got to it later. It's an anocracy, but it's moving up towards flawed democracy status. Inequality is still high and GDP per capita is still low, but at the very least the economy is stabilized and conditions are rapidly improving. As for the USNA, well, once we take control of it properly, I'm going to want to start fixing it. In particular, we can't have Americans end the game with totalitarian government. That just won't do. So let's sell 6 units of antimatter and direct invest, let's say 200 points straight of knowledge into the country, pushing it from 0.4 to 0.9 straight away. It's not something, but it helps. And let's just do nothing but knowledge and welfare across the entire country. I'll secure it, and Americans, I can't guarantee that I'll fix everything overnight, but your democracy and your inequality will be resolved, and then we'll get your economy back on track. But I do right now need your giant military to start absorbing Mexico and Canada and all these remaining countries, because that's what's ultimately going to fix the CP cap. And for the love of God, I'm going to get rid of this bloody xenoforming. How has no one gotten rid of the xenoforming? There are literally xenofauna and flora in Washington, D.C. province. So let's fix that. Now, with the US being secured, that means we're going to be pretty close to our objectives, and so we have built a taxi for the Chancellor that will have to go to serve as the delegation to the Hydra. This, in honor of one of my patron requests, is the Boris, which will be carrying. It's not a pion torch powered one this time. I figured the Academy wasn't particularly big on the whole let's burn the GDP of North America in order to get there slightly faster thing. And with 6 Daedalus torches, it's actually going to do the journey very, very quickly regardless, and we're going to have a little bit of time. In terms of who does the journey, I think there is really only one option. We have a 25 persuasion counselor, Rhea, so I think she's the one who has to do the mission. What can we unequip from Rhea? I think CE... Well, let's be honest, we don't need this anymore, so we'll unequip that. And we'll unequip Castle Innovation. And we will equip the mission to the Hydra. And why not? Let's equip this security group as well. So Rhea is going to be heading to orbit. And of all our options, she goes to the Boris for the flight out to the Kuiper Belt. While what we do back on Earth, despite being over our CP cap, is fortify our position as much as possible, bring unrest down, and try and hold things together until we get to the Kuiper Belt. I'm building my first settlements around Uranus, which is the last major subsystem that I need to colonize in order to hit our objectives. I've had to temporarily abandon Mexico just in order to allow some sense of order on our CP cap, but I'm not slowing the Indian economy down for anything. I want to crack the 100,000 mark, so we're going to do it. Anyway, we're going to fly the Chancellor out. We're sending most of our troops back to their home bases to maximize the investment point return. We are in pretty good shape. I think we're pretty close to the end at this point. Alright, there you are. It's not a fantastic transfer window, but by spending 5,193 KPS on what is basically a torch trajectory to Rousseau's station, we'll get there in about 7 weeks. So the 30th of July 2039 is how long we have. Let's just make sure that she's on board the right ship. I assume she is. There we are. Is how long we have to get Earth sorted before our Chancellor is in position to negotiate things with our rivals, or rather, our respected counterparties, the Hydra, who we will continue smashing in the face to make sure their fleet doesn't get too powerful in the meantime. And as if to emphasize my point, there is another alien station that we are going to take out before negotiations continue. I rationalize this by saying that I would like, 1, to be confident in the negotiation success, and 2, I want lots and lots of exotics in case we can no longer grab them in a diplomatically acceptable way. The Hydra might use them as leverage in negotiations, and it's kind of bad form to attack someone once you've got a peace treaty. So I'm thinking we gather as many of them as possible from the Hydra before peace breaks out. After all, those things are kind of cool. They're central to a lot of the technology we use now. We can't build Daedalus torches or a lot of our technology without the exotics that are in these ships and stations. So really, this is just glorified mining activity, plus a fantastic disco show. There is a certain sort of evil beauty to it all. And these high-tech dreadnoughts don't have any more firepower than our older ones. They're just much more maneuverable in terms of having Daedalus torches rather than Zeta Hellions and a couple of other upgrades. But they do look more foreboding as they roll in on a station like this. One thing I do want to try against alien stations, specifically in a future playthrough, if and when that happens, is more use of very long-range laser weapons, because station modules don't have armor. The primary weakness of lasers is they do basically no damage to armor at range. So what I imagine would happen if you bring a whole bunch of very long-range laser weapons, I imagine it could be quite useful, although plasma does the job of getting through PD perfectly well. And there we are. Victory for the Academy. Once more. Let's just advance time a little bit. Destroy the station. There we are. Falling Moon Station has been destroyed. I want habitations. Aliens. Alright, we're down to 4 bases total, including Alien Surface Base Alpha, so we're doing pretty well. I will get the Mothership Hunters repaired and back to a base. What is the closest one to them at this point? That looks like a nice burnout to Jupiter. Yeah, 5 weeks. Perfect burnout to Jupiter. So let's make a burn to Io, and we can refuel and rearm there.
Things are stabilizing.
Awesome. I'm now researching nothing other than management research, which costs about 43,000 per iteration at this point, which means I research it roughly every 2 weeks. So every month I should increase my CP cap by about 10. Not enough to close this gap, but certainly enough to keep us to the point where the penalty is acceptable and we can sort of survive it. What are these armies doing down here? Let's airlift those home. I would disband them, but I want to bring unrest down in all my countries. Then I want to start disbanding the militaries. And then I want to start abolishing nuclear weapons. As our councillors head out to the outer reach of the solar system, I think all these Eurasian nuclear weapons need to go away. I won't be able to get rid of the European Union's ones, but I think I can abolish this atomic arsenal, probably a significant share of the American one. I basically just want to start global disarmament at this point, both in terms of armies and nukes. After all, the European Union can probably be politically dealt with at some point, but with the United States and North America now squarely under control, South America one country, this one country, this thing one country, and this one country, I don't think we're going to be having too much of a problem in terms of geopolitical struggle. And the Boris has done its job, carrying our delegate all the way to the aliens' doorstep, which is fantastic. We'll merge up with the fleet just for a little bit of safety and hang out until it is time to launch our mission, which should be very, very shortly. UES Boris has been resupplied. We can merge that fleet with Action Group Enlightenment, and we can go the Delegation as the name for this particular fleet. Assault Hab odds on Alien Surface Base Alpha are 70%. We can do better than that. Let us undock. Fantastic. Let us bombard. Great. Oh, it's still 70%. I think we'd have better odds if we assaulted from the station because we have a bunch of Marines, but let's move in and assault the Hab. What are our odds at the moment? We're at 73%, so what we will do is we will set the Hab to assault. Hopefully we will succeed. Okay, I'm not sure if we will succeed, in fact. We will find out next time on this episode of Terra Invicta. No, we're in fact going to continue. So we've got the suitably intimidating task force in orbit, which should give the aliens an idea of what they are dealing with. So now what we need to do back on planet Earth is push ourselves over the 75% marker. So we're at 73 at the moment, and I think the best way to close this out would be to get someone convincing like Jay and grab the executive point in the United States of Northern America. We'll take a break from all of this.
Your orders?
And instead, we're going to start setting national policy
On my way to the capital. Your orders?
in the Eurasian Union to start getting rid of this mess of armies and these nuclear weapons. basically showing Earth that we're on our way to our utopia. Of course, if you live in giant Asia blob, then utopia is probably already here. You have inequality better than the most sock dam paradise out there, a GDP per capita of 102,764 US dollars, incredible education standards, and a perfect and participative democracy. What more do you want from me? I give you the Academy's paradise. And if you're saying the problem is that cohesion is too high and that everyone thinks the situation is great, well, yes, everyone thinks the situation is great because I would say, from an objective standpoint, things are at the very least pretty damn good. Alright, so the Marines on board the fleet failed, but I've got Rhea back on board the station, and she can use the Marine battalions that we've stationed there in order to stage her assault. Just in case you missed it, let's go back to the delegation. As you can imagine, my list here is starting to get cluttered with the sheer number of ships and stations that I have operational. If you have a look at Rousseau's station, we've built a number of these Marine battalion barracks, each of which give 15 Marine combat strength on board the station. So there's how many people? There's 5,800 crew aboard this station. A lot of them are Marines, and a lot of them are going to drop with Rhea in order to convince the aliens to receive our diplomatic envoys. Alright, there we go. Rhea has done her job. She's assaulted the alien surface base, which means all we really need to do now is get the final CP that we need in order to qualify. We're at 1,000 over 949. Tell me that is enough. It is almost enough. Alright, I'm going to have to spam some economic growth, just tick this up a few more points, maybe absorb Mexico quickly. Alright, there you are. The Academy has eliminated thousands of nuclear weapons in a matter of months. I think we've just halved the number of atomic weapons on Earth by getting rid of the Eurasian Union's nuclear arsenal, and we brought it down from 8 armies to 2, which seems much more reasonable for a country of that size, peacekeeping and the maintenance of order. The Caliphate has gone down to 1 army. Super India still has most of its, but we could get rid of some of those in order to push this investment point number even higher. GDP per capita is now 107,000 US dollars, which means the total GDP of Mega India is 509 trillion US dollars with 15.2k science output. The United States will take longer to fix, but we're working on it. We did absorb Mexico in order to make sure that our objective could be achieved, so we will now airlift those divisions home. So Mexico will be fixed along with the United States as we continue. We may not get time to actually fix the country, given that we're so close to achieving our objective, but certainly after a very hard few decades, everything is trending upwards. Democracy, inequality is going down, and we'll get the economy growing as well. America will be healed. The Caliphate, such as it is cresting towards full democracy, and indeed, if we run the game for a few more months, it will make it. Inequality is still high, but rapidly falling. There is hope here. Most people agree education standards are increasing to advanced levels for the all 2.6 billion people of Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. So life is definitely improving. And in Mega India, Pan Asia, there is no comparison. This is the homeland of the Academy, and it is a monstrosity with nearly 510 trillion. It is 20 contemporary United States in terms of economic heft. The average person is incredibly wealthy, and the average person is indeed the average person because inequality is basically nothing. Education standards well exceed anything that existed anywhere on the world in 2022, and the military still uses T90. That's a heck of an achievement. And so with our CP cap now showing 1008 over 964, Rhea can lead the diplomats through the portal with an antimatter bomb and a proposal for an alliance with the Hydra. The mothership hunters will probably get to 19 Fortuna and destroy the base before she gets there, but such is life. The Hydra should have accounted for us earlier. A quick rip round Earth. We've seen it already, but Earth is generally on the mend. Given a couple more years, I think it would all be superb. We might just need some unity in South America, but other than that, we're in pretty good shape. Everywhere that the Academy has touched is turning to gold. in terms of democratic values, which are improving everywhere. Like even this 1.0 in Russia is a considerable improvement on the 0 that we found it in less than a year ago. Within 5 years, I expect we'd have that back to flawed democracy, the economy recovered, and everything for the better. The majority of the world's population lives here, or a near majority. No, I think that's legitimately still a majority. It lives here. In fact, let's look at the global statistics. So, 73% of the global population of 9.3 billion support the Academy. 215,000 people live in space aboard our stations and colonies. The global GDP is $620 trillion, the vast majority of which is in Pan-Asia. The average per capita income of every man, woman, and child on the planet is $66,700 US. Global warming is plus 1.7 degrees, so this is something that humanity would still have to fight, but I imagine with an economy this large and science on our side, it's possible. In terms of fleets in space, the Academy fields 144 ships with a total combat power of 151,000. Against that, the Hydra now have 64, with a combat value of 18,945. In terms of total hab count, well, it's a lot. Like, a lot. Every major subsystem, Neptune, Uranus, even Pluto, has permanent Academy settlement. Mercury has every orbital slot filled with a level 3 ring facility, and every ground level filled with maximum population colony habs. Mars has a population of 52,950, which means in orbit of Mars you have stations where people can go, be rich, or, just enjoy life. If I look at the home of the Prodi litigation team, the Academic Convention Center is under construction. This has 3 space resorts that will be finished in 14 days, 3 geriatrics facilities that will be finished in 14 days, and a whole host of other exciting facilities. This will produce a bunch of money, but it's basically where all of the Academy elite and people who are, academics, engineers, important people, can come and talk about how important they are while watching Mars in the distance. What a effective use of resources during a time of total war. In any case, I have blathered enough about all of our achievements. Let's set the Academy Chancellors to go abolish the United States nuclear arsenal, thus bringing the world closer to total nuclear abolition. This will make the European Union the European Union and Mega India the only nuclear states on the planet. And I'm pretty sure given enough time I could have disarmed the European Union as well. Perhaps even disarmed Mega India, removing all nuclear weapons from the globe. We're pretty much there. Let's run the clock.
There is little we cannot achieve when we put our minds together. A void, once daunting, reduced to a superhighway. A foe, once invincible, has learned to respect us. We stride forward with minds open and hearts full of courage, reaching together towards a unified future.
Yeah, let's be friends or we'll wreck your shit. But anyway, there we are. Victory for the Academy. A faction known as the Academy has achieved its final goals. Academy diplomats have concluded a peace agreement with the aliens. All of Earth is rejoicing. The period after our envoy team passed through the wormhole felt like an age. Our forces withdrew and waited in a tense standoff with the remaining Hydra. Minutes passed, then hours. We waited, studying our senses for any indication of the burst of radiation that would have indicated the bomb on the other side had detonated. Yet what eventually came through the wormhole was 2 of our own personnel, and they brought incredible news. The Hydra leadership had agreed to a temporary ceasefire. Okay. From there, things moved swiftly, and more Hydras passed through the wormhole, armed and suspicious, but not immediately hostile. They demanded access to our bioweapon. We refused, but stressed that we would not use it so long as the ceasefire was maintained. The Hydras declared that this was unsatisfactory, but crucially, this time they did not cut off communications. Instead, we were able to set up a relay system allowing back and forth message transmission with the Hydra leadership on the other side of the wormhole. Relationships were still tense. The Hydras continued to make demands, and back on Earth, the anti-alien factions are refusing to commit to the ceasefire, but negotiations continue, and the Hydra demands are becoming almost reasonable. They've dropped their insistence on orbital weapon platforms and are instead demanding guarantees against bioweapon research and development. We have agreed in principle in exchange for the Hydra's recognizing human sovereignty over Earth, and we will offer access to our existing bioweapons research at some point in the future as an incentive. They're asking for Hold on. Hold on. So we guarantee that we won't build the weapons that scare them, and will hand over the schematics of the weapons that scare them, to which they may potentially develop a countermeasure, and in exchange what we receive is they acknowledge that we're sovereign over our own system. Okay, I'm going to keep reading. They're asking for volunteers to join their forces as well. Arguments continue, but these are the kind of arguments I am familiar with in diplomatic exchange, the kind where both sides have a stake in the outcome. Hard as it is to believe, I think that the ceasefire will last, and once the ceasefire is in place, it is much easier to maintain than it is to establish in the first place. Our position is still precarious. The anti-alien factions on Earth have already made clear they consider the truce only a temporary break in hostilities while they build their strength. It is only a matter of time until they launch an attack upon the Hydras or us. I'm sorry, we control everything. We have a massive fleet. We dominate. We have Mega India. What are they going to do? And the Hydras do not have the slightest faith or trust in our species. If they can see a way to subjugate us without risk, I have no doubt that they will take it. Yet compared to a month ago, our situation has improved immeasurably. For the first time, there is a visible path, no matter how shaky, towards peace. In the early weeks after first contact, I had a dream that one day humans and our alien visitors might be united, an alliance of alien species, each different, each cooperating. Some sort of united federation of planets, perhaps. We are far, far from the day where that could ever come, if it is even possible at all, but what we have done here is a good start. I'm not sure we'll get there if we hand over our one major bargaining chip to them in exchange for a pinky promise, but you know what? You're the expert diplomat, not me, and I call that a job well done. I've got a series of achievements pop up on screen, and there we go. And so our playthrough as the Academy comes to an end in 2039, with the Earth in a much better position than when it started, and tense negotiations in place with the Hydra. I quite enjoyed this run. It revealed to me just how powerful the population scaling mechanics for things like research are. So while it takes a huge amount of effort to put together, that Super Asia that we assembled was incredibly powerful as a research and economic engine. I definitely missed having access to assassinations like as Humanity First. I missed having access to a lot of my other tools. I missed having access to the beat stick that was the US military. And early on, the reliance on Kazakhstan for boost was nearly total. But once we got over that hump, I feel like the Asia strategy worked. We could have won the game, I think, as any other faction from Asia and Africa. In fact, I'm convinced you could probably win from Africa alone as long as you're either patient or you allow Kazakhstan at the start of the game. The problem was the Academy win condition forced us to take over most of the rest of the world in order to unlock our final mission. But we didn't win the game off the backs of those other countries. We just went and saved them using the forces of the developing world at the end. So I very much hope that you enjoyed that run. I have no clue what I'm going to do next. I have been enjoying this run, however. I'm going to give it a day or two, see how I'm feeling, maybe put up a poll, and then we'll figure out what comes next. In any case, I hope you've enjoyed this run, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you all again soon. Cheers. Oh, and hey, I'm on the credits list. That's awesome.